Corporate people are not paying anything here in South Africa. Let's make them pay. We need to introduce the wealth tax. People buy buffaloes for 30 million, for 50 million, because they've got enough money and they don't know what to do with that money. We must deploy SARS in each and every auction in South Africa to monitor everyone who buys expensive animals and tax them heavily because they've got money to play with animals. Russia equipped us, Russia trained us, gave us education, gave us money to fight with the apartheid government. We will never stand with Ukraine. And we don't want Zelensky to visit South Africa because he's a puppet of the Western forces. The question we must ask is, where was Israel and USA, which seek to call us a nation that commits human rights violation today, when the world turned its back on apartheid South Africa? We must never forget those who resisted sanctions, those who continue to trade with and arm the apartheid regime. The United States, the United Kingdom under Margaret Thatcher, and Israel were amongst the worst offenders, actively supporting the apartheid regime. Let us never forget that the USA classified our freedom fighters as terrorists. The US did not just support apartheid with words. It armed and funded the regime. During the Cold War, America saw the racist apartheid government as a strategic ally against communism, choosing to back white supremacy over justice. The CIA assisted in the capture of Nelson Mandela in 1962, handing him over to the apartheid regime. Washington ensured that South Africa's economy remained functional, allowing companies like General Motors, IBM, and Coca-Cola to continue business while black South Africans suffered under the boot of oppression. White life in this country is worth more than black life. The worth of a white life on South Africa means so much that when there is a death of a white person due to crime that affects us all, it is called a white genocide. Because whenever a white person dies, the whole world must pay attention. Fellow fighters, we must refuse the idea that a black life is so cheap that even our history of sacrifice and resistance can be changed to message to conscience, to massage the conscience of our oppressors. Our people were massacred by apartheid regime today. The human rights of Africans have not changed ever since those Africans were killed here, and we are still disrespected by white supremacists that insist that white people must be comfortable at the expense of black people. And when white people are not comfortable, then black people must be punished with sanctions and isolation. We must ask the ruling government, why do we not tell those who seek to sanction us for fighting for our land that it was Nelson Mandela's dream that South Africa should be equal? Why do we not remind the international community that loves Nelson Mandela so much that Nelson Mandela did not stand for reconciliation only, but he believed that the land and the wealth of South Africa must be shared. And for this, he started an armed struggle because the white apartheid regime did not listen to a peaceful means. Why does this government not tell the USA that when white racists refused equality, Nelson Mandela said they must just be confronted with arms, and that today we are better because we are confronting racists with legislation and the Constitution to expropriate land without compensation? The USA is not interested in diplomacy. The USA is interested in dominance over us by any means necessary. And we must stand up and fight for ourselves because we represent a historical mission. And that mission is the return of the land. Whether Donald Trump's like it or not, we are going to fight for the return of the land in South Africa. Comrades, it is for the first time in our history as democratic nation that South Africa faces the threat of sanction and economic isolation. And that is because the white minority which control the land and the wealth fears equality. Where was the USA when our mothers were fed to pigs in Limpopo by white farmers? Where was the USA with its sanctions when Eugene Terreblanche was raping young boys on his farm before they resisted and killed the racists because no one will act against him? Where were the sanctions of America when a child was shot by a farmer in the Northern Cape for picking a flower on his farm, and we were told that this child was mistaken for a monkey? Where was the international community when the racists at the University of Free State fed our mothers who were domestic workers human waste? Why were our people who were stuffed into a coffin alive in Mpumalanga not offered refugee status in America? Comrades, what does the USA have to say about the murderers of Flag Plus who roam our society today freely and have never accounted for their crimes? Where is the International Criminal Court to prosecute Voter Basson, Dr. Death, who used chemical warfare and medicine to poison and kill anti-apartheid activists? Voter Basson, who committed these human rights violations, is sitting comfortably here in South Africa while victims of his biological warfare, which violated human rights, suffered the consequences and never saw justice. How can we be expected to reconcile with those who have never acknowledged these crimes and were never held accountable for them? How can we be asked to share our land, our resources, and our future with those who still believe that Orania and Volksstad are their birthright in Africa, while the mass graves of our people are ignored?